To Chapter 7, Product Development. Now, this is a subject that I majored in college. Product development is basically concept to consumer. So, product development, the teaming of market and trend research with merchandising, design, technical processes that develop the final product. Used by wholesale manufacturers who develop products for any type of signature brand. Also used by retailers to develop private labels for their own stores. And private labels can be like Target, how they have their own private labels, or the actual brand of the store. Whether making a t-shirt or an evening gown, apparel industries in the US have all settled for the same basic cycle of production and design that repeats itself, more or less unchanged from season to season. What we do update are colorways and textiles. Before clothing reaches the store, there is a great deal of work to be done. Um, Anything from mood boards to highlight any concepts that you may have, to presenting your line at a trade show or a market week. Product lines of apparel are created and styled for wholesale presentations several times a year or season per year. Here are the basic seasons that are shown per month. Spring is shown in October and November of the year prior or before. Summer is shown early January. So, for example, many brands are showing their summer collections now. Transitional and Fall 1 is shown in February. Fall and Fall 2 is shown in April. Resort wear is shown in August. And holiday is shown in August as well. Ideally, designers start their new lines anywhere from 3 to 12 months before presentation to the retail buyers. Now, this timeline has been tightening within a few months, not only with not only with the pandemic, but the lead times are shortening now. Buyers are buying closer to the season. Many firms are constantly updating their apparel product lines to keep buyers shopping all year round. Designers typically work on 3 seasons or collections at the same time. They have to be monitoring the sales results from the sales of their current collection. They're finishing up this season's line, and they're starting to develop for next season's collection. Moderate and popular price product lines of apparel are called lines. So anything that's not high end are called lines. Lines are not only in comparison of an individual item or apparel, but the entire season's productions for that manufacturer as well. So here is what is known as a line sheet. This is a sheet that's given to a potential buyer to show the type of apparel that you're showcasing. Here, they probably have some embroidery on the hats and beanies, and some screen printing on t-shirts and sweatshirts. Each garment has its own style number, SKU, and UPC code, so you can identify what style the buyer's ordering, whether it's a t-shirt with an embroidery or a t-shirt with a screen print. Anchor styles, or also known as best sellers, a style from a previous season that is reworked in a different color or fabric. Now, this term will change from company to company, but it's always going to be the same. It's either an anchor style or a bestseller. The term collection is used to describe more expensive lines of clothing in the US. Copying from creative designers is very common throughout the fashion industry, and it's not really considered piracy because the rule of thumb is to change things 20%. Here are some examples of kimono runway looks from Lavigne to Anna Sui, all the way from kimono runway looks and Anthropologie and Nordstrom's. At some firms, few, if any, designs are original. The risk of confusion is a key that is very hard to trademark. Under US law, the company cannot copyright a design, but it can register elements of the design as a trademark. For example, Hermes sued a retailer who was aggressively pushing the transparent rubber version of a Birkin bag. For most of fashion industry, copying is a way of life. It's expensive and risky to actually create new designs, and it's cheaper and easier to simply knock off something that's already successful. Typically, designers just let the copies go. After all, new designs will come in a few more months. Lawsuits are time consuming, expensive, and almost never guarantees a win. Merchandisers, channels the creativity of designers and design staff. And the merchandisers channel is basically the right merchandise at the right price, at the right time, to the right place, in the right quantity, with the right promotion to the right customer. Just as you were probably not going to sell fur coats in the middle of the summer months in Los Angeles, having the right product at the right time is crucial for any successful outcome of apparel. Liaison between design, production, and sales, and therefore must be knowledgeable of all three areas. This is for your merchandiser. Your merchandiser kind of guides the design team to the right direction because they work so closely with the potential buyers and they understand who their customer is. Designers create, sketch, and also use computer-aided drawing or draping on a model. All designers must produce at a profit within the firm's price range. Designers must keep in mind the availability of materials, cost of sewing and cutting the garment, and labor cost. Fashion designers usually fall into one of three categories: high fashion, which is like name designers, stylists, and freelance designers. Designers are well-known high fashion names. They generally create original designs but have the design staff work on them. Stylist designers are creative talents that are often adapted or changed to the successful designs of others. And freelance designers sell their sketches to manufacturers. Producers are three types of manufacturers: jobbers and contractors. They perform all necessary operations to produce apparel, like buying fabric, selling, and shipping finished goods. Jobbers are an aspect of manufacturing except for sewing. Contractors are outside shops that provide services such as sewing. Planning a line. Designers and manufacturers work together to review trends, colors, fabrics, and to create a line. Creating a design concept involves something like a mood board, creating your vision and colorway for that season. It may also have fabric swatches, fabrics that you may be using. Developing the design is next, where you actually mock up a very first sample in the desired fabric. From there, it goes on to fittings. And then once it's adapted into the collection, developing a computer aided design with um, proper software to determine what the cost would be to mass produce an item. Production planning involves points of manufacturing, sourcing the fabric, and actually purchasing the raw goods. Forms like cost sheets, POs, or orders, everything from minimums, are all in the production planning phase. Production grading and marking makes sure that you can fit as many sizing in one flat lay of fabric that you can to reduce fabric waste. Spreading cutting. This is when you use a spreader machine to spread out the fabric on the cutting table to lay flat to cut multiple layers. Production bundling, also known as send-outs. This is where you have a treatment that needs to be sent out to the contractor, kind of like a applique or a screen print or an embroidery. Production sewing and finishing, quality inspection. This is where you finish ironing and pressing, add the hang tags and into its desired packaging material. Distribution is next. Usually it involves shipping. Specializing by category. Categories in fashion fall under gender, age, size category, and classification. Historically, the U.S. apparel industry divided into three major categories, which is women's, men's, and children's. Specializing by product. Brands and labels can also specialize by product: national designer brands, private label, retail store brand, and other brands, or non-brands. Let's go through each of these. So brands and labels are national brands that are widely known. They're owned by the manufacturer who advertises them nationally. Designer labels feature the actual designer name. Private labels are brands that are owned by a retailer but found only in those stores, just like Massimo and Target. And retail brand stores is the brand of the name of the chain store, like Gap. Other brands includes entertainment industry, sports teams, universities, and licensed goods, just like the LA Dodgers. Non-brands are labels that are not advertised and not very well known, kind of like sports teams or any other type of non-brands. Industry practices often start out as trends and then develop in response to that specific industry problem. Manufacturers act as retailers. Licensing, private label, or offshore production, the usage of factors or chargebacks. Industry practices with manufacturers acting as retailers is an example where Ralph Lauren started his participating when he was opening his first store in Rodeo Drive. Factory outlets allow manufacturers to dispose of poor selling items. Licensing is a legal agreement where firms are given the right to produce and market merchandise in the name of the licensor. Vera Wang does a great job with her not only bridal, but anything to do that is registered for a wedding, like the fine china and the bedding and the towels. Private label and specification buying is an type of manufacturers that act as retailers, which is private label buying or private label lines. Examples of that is Gap. Specification buying requires that the manufacturer produces garments to the standards and guidelines established by the retailer, just like JCPenney. Offshore production. Today, the American Apparel and Footwear Association estimates that 96% of apparel sold in the US is imported. Although companies no longer manufacture here, they still employ people for research, development, sourcing, marketing, warehousing, and distribution. Another industry practice to be aware of are the use of factors. Factors purchase accounts receivable or advance cash to manufacturers based upon accounts receivable. The risk is higher and there is interest rates that are higher. Credit insurance is an alternative for the companies that do not use factors, and it's much cheaper than letters of credit. Chargebacks are official penalties imposed by retailers for mistakes made in manufacturers for late deliveries or uncooperative advertising. So let me just explain these a little further. Say you're a small design firm, and your styles get picked up with Urban Outfitter. The buyer from Urban Outfitter wants you to distribute your product in all of their Western stores. You're very excited, you get this very large purchase order, and when it comes to production, you say, "Hey, I cannot afford to buy all of this fabric to produce your order for you." You may either ask for a deposit down, or you may use factors that will give you a line of credit for with interest, of course. It's like a credit. Okay, so you ship off this Urban Outfitter order to all of the Western stores, and you're very excited, and you think you have a very nice profit from that one order. And then you start getting little bills, which are called chargebacks, from the department store, from Urban Outfitters, and you say, "Hey, what's going on here?" Well, Urban Outfitters from the beginning will give you their book of rules, how they would like you to ship the item, where the hang tag should go, what kind of labels you should put on the outside plastic, how you're going to package the items in the box, what kind of labels you're going to use on that box for shipping, and where you're going to ship it to. If you make any mistakes and do not cooperate with their instructions, they're allowed to charge you back for any mistakes. Why do they do this, and how are they allowed? Their distribution pipeline is so streamlined that if anybody causes disruption by slowing that down, they in turn charge you back for your mistakes. And that's one thing to be aware of before accepting a large order from a large company or corporation. Brand extensions. Companies use successful brand names to launch new products or modified lines, just like perfumes. Lots of brands like to add accessory products. Corporations like companies work together to harness technology or cost of the product distribution pipeline. Globalization includes finding foreign customers as well as foreign competitors. When you start sending things globally, you must make sure that your item falls in that specific standard industry classification code. This is how you get taxed or not taxed, by knowing these type of codes, shipping codes. Computer integrated manufacturing, also known as CAD or computer aided manufacturing, a standalone computerized equipment that is now used for most manufacturing facilities to create a cost sheet of that item digitally, so you'll understand how much it's going to cost, how many items you can fit in a yardage of fabric. Quick response is the business strategy to the U.S. manufacturers who have more competitive importers, and it's a direct link between the manufacturer suppliers and retailers that dramatically shorten the lead time. Basically, when you have this quick response system, as soon as your styles are scanned with a barcode, that electronic data then gets sent to your warehouse to say, hey, this manufacturer or this retailer is running low on your product. You may want to replenish. And that's where EDU, electronic data interchange, come into play. This is an interchange of data between one company's computer to another, just like these barcodes that you will supply the retailer with. That's how you know and track how many items you have sold at what price. Last slide is mass customization. We're seeing more of this and body scanning, more of this as we're going into the future of strictly purchasing online. And it's all computer software that works with individual body measurements and creates a unique fitting for that consumer. So that in a nutshell is our chapter 7.